A benefit, a new inspirational thought. Human beings have two main powers. Meaning, man's endeavors in life arise from two main capacities. A power of theoretical knowledge, and a practical power of willingness to act. And his complete happiness depends on fulfilling both powers, the theoretical knowledge, and the practical willingness. Reaching the perfection of the power of theoretical knowledge comes from knowing his creator and originator, and knowing his names and attributes. It also lies in knowing the path that leads to him and its obstacles, and by knowing his own self and its flaws. By means of these things, he will attain perfection of the power of theoretical knowledge. The most knowledgeable people are those who know them best. And the perfection of the practical power of willingness to act does not occur unless the rights of Allah, God, the Almighty, are observed by the servant. The rights of Allah, God, be fulfilled by performing one's obligations with sincerity, honesty, advice, kindness, goodness, and acknowledging his Lord's favor upon him, and feeling of default in performing the duties. Therefore, the servant of Allah, God, feels shy to stand before him with the small amount of service he did for Allah, God, because he knows that it is far below what he deserves and so much less than that. He, servant of God, also knows that there is no way to fulfill these two powers unless Allah, God, helps him. So he desires to be guided to the straight way, to which he, the Almighty, guided his sincere and special servants, and helps him to avoid the things that would let him stray from that right path, either by an imperfection in his theoretical knowledge, which leads to astray, or by an imperfection in his practical power, which will incur the wrath of Allah, God, the Almighty. Therefore, the perfection of mankind and his happiness can only be fulfilled by all these things combined. And the opener, Al-Fatiha, the first chapter in the Quran, has mentioned them and has arranged them perfectly. Allah, God, the Almighty says, "All praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the most beneficent, the most merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment."
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين.
These Quranic verses contain the first origin, principle. And that is to have knowledge of knowing the Lord be exalted, and to have knowledge of his beautiful names, attributes, and actions. The names that are mentioned in this chapter are the bases of the beautiful names of Allah, God, the Almighty. Namely, Allah, God, and O Rabb, the Lord, and Al-Rahman, the Beneficent. The name Allah, God, includes the divine attributes. And the name Al-Rabb, the Lord, includes the lordship attributes. And the name Al-Rahman, the Beneficent, includes qualities and attributes of benevolence, generosity, and righteousness. And all the meanings of his names, be exalted, are based around these attributes. And his statement, in the same chapter, 1, next verse number 5, he says, "Thee alone we worship, and thee alone we ask for help."
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
This Quranic verse contains the knowledge of knowing the path that leads to Him, the Almighty, which is only found by worshipping Him alone, with that which He loves and satisfies, and by asking His help to worship Him properly. And His statement, in verse 6, guide us to the straight path.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
This Quranic verse declares that the servant has no way to achieve happiness except by keeping on the straight path, and that there is no way to straightness without the guidance of his Lord. And since there is no way for him to worship his Lord except with his help, glory be to him, there is no way for mankind to be righteous on the path except by his Lord's guidance.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Not of those who earned your anger, or of those who are astray. This Quranic verse declares that there are two directions of deviation from the straight path, and that deviating to one of these two directions is a deviation into misguidance, which is the corruption of knowledge and belief. And the other deviation is the deviation that leads to anger of God, and it's caused by the corruption of intentions and deeds. Therefore, the beginning of the chapter is mercy, meaning, all about mercy. The middle is guidance, about guidance. And the end is a blessing of favor. The servant receives favor, blessings, according to his level of guidance, and the guidance he receives is according to the amount of mercy he receives from Allah, God. So the whole issue returns to God's favor and mercy. And the favor and mercy are the basic characteristics of His Lordship. He says in the Quran, "Peace be on you, your Lord has ordained mercy on Himself," chapter 6, verse 45. Therefore, He can only be all-merciful and bestower of grace, bounties and favors, a benefactor. And that is one of the characteristics and obligations of His divinity. Because He is the true God. Even if the ungrateful choose to deny it, and even if the polytheists set up equals to Him. So, whoever complies with the meaning of chapter Al-Fatiha, the opener, in terms of knowledge, knowing and understanding, action, deeds, and his way of living life, through his perfection, he will win the greatest portion of guidance, grace, mercy, and blessings, and his state of worship submission will become the same as those whose degree has been raised above the common worshippers. And Allah is the source of our assistance.